So thank you for joining us. Today's webinar, Supporting the Crew, Peer Support and Postvention in the Construction Industry, is going to examine the essential role peer support programs play in construction and also provide practical strategies for suicide postvention, which is supporting individuals and teams after a loss. And so we have some expert speakers here, and I want to introduce them, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to them. And I'm going to introduce all of the speakers, and we'll hear first about the peer support programs that the laborers in St. Louis are working on, and then we'll have Dr. John Gaal talk with us about suicide postvention, and then we're going to open it up to questions. And I do want to say, if you have any questions, feel free to put any comments into the chat, and I will pick them up from there and we'll have that go. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first two speakers are James Pursell and Aaron Walsh, and they are laborers recovery specialists from the Greater St. Louis Construction Laborers Welfare Fund. And they're part of the Lean St. Louis or STL program. And just explaining what that is, LEAN stands for Laborers Escaping Addiction Now, although I think you might have modified that, in St. Louis. And it's a confidential 24/7 peer support program created by laborers for laborers to address substance use, mental health challenges, and recovery needs within the construction trades. So the program provides members and their families, so not just the members, but also their families, with tools, resources, and personal support from trained peer specialists who have lived experience. Through meeting members where they are, offering treatment connections, mental health advocacy, and family support, Lean St. Louis helps ensure no laborer faces adversity alone. And we'll put the link to that program in the chat too. So let me introduce James, who is our first peer support specialist here. James has done a lot of things. He's a son, father, husband, brother, friend, a Marine, and a laborer. So quite a diverse background. Like many in the field, he's navigated poverty, addiction, mental illness, and the loss caused by suicide. But his journey was shaped by the helping hands of others. And today, he's going to pay that forward by being present for those who need support the most. He's been a proud LIUNA member since 2001, and he brings deep empathy, lived experience, and unwavering commitment to his role as a peer support specialist with Lean St. Louis. Aaron's recovery story began on a job site. There we go. Give you some links to them. In St. Louis, where seeing a fellow laborer thriving in recovery planted a seed of hope. Although he wasn't ready that day, consistent check-ins from that peer helped him eventually choose recovery himself. Today, Aaron embodies that same compassionate persistence, reminding others that it's okay not to be okay and that change is possible. In recovery since May 27, 2015, and a LIUNA member since 1998, Aaron is passionate about meeting people where they are and serving as a steady source of support and possibility within the Lean St. Louis program. Our third speaker is Dr. John Gaal. He is a nationally recognized leader in workplace wellness, suicide prevention, and peer support within the construction industry. He currently serves as the director of the Missouri Works Initiative Worker Wellness Program, and he has more than 40 years of experience that spans across labor, workforce development, and higher education. A former union apprentice, Dr. Gaal is a certified peer supporter, a labor assistant professional, and an adjunct professor with a doctoral training in organizational leadership. So his work integrates research, lived experience, and real-world implementation, including peer-reviewed publications on peer support models in construction and leadership roles in national and international worker wellness initiatives. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron and James and ask them to share with us. And I'm going to go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Aaron Walsh, St. Louis Laborers, local 42 member since 1998. Yeah, we did modify our name from addiction to adversity to kind of open up and cast a broader net and wider umbrella to really allow people to feel more comfortable coming forward with mental health concerns, which we know they go hand in hand, right? Addiction and mental health. So um, yeah, so uh, we man a 24-hour hotline. Danny mentioned that, and guys can call us anytime. And what makes this really effective is normalizing these conversations, bringing them to the spotlight. Um, and really that's breaking through stigma, right? Because people with mental health concerns and addiction issues, we face a lot of stigma, personal stigma, occupational, societal. These issues have been punitive for a really long time, and so we're bringing forth the fact that people struggle, and we need each other. So we bring to the table is the shared lived experience of working in the industry, long hours, and working in the environment. A lot of stress. We can, the path looks very narrow for us a lot of times, right? Like we do this certain thing. It's our identity. And yeah, so we also share our lived experience in recovery. And that's what makes it comfortable for guys to come forward and really speak their truth to what's going on, and hopefully, um, you know, what we'd love to see with most people is to catch them, right? To have them thinking about making changes in their life before they get to an acute crisis, right? So that's kind of the start. You want to?
Cool. James Pursell here, Aaron's partner, Local 110. You heard a little bit about me. Uh, Really incredible program. We have been, March 1st, we'll have been here 3 years. And uh, you heard about the hotline. It's so much more than that, although that's a great entryway for people to engage us. What makes this programming different, what makes peer work is we're not a program that lives on a shelf, right? We're not just another number. Our men and women have had these great resources for a long time. Uh, Anyone on this webinar who hasn't heard this, for the last year, we have numbers under 1,000 job site related deaths, right? These are accidents on the job site. Over 5,000 suicides for the same year for our membership for tradespersons. 16,000 substance use deaths. So we have some challenges there. And so we have a population that's struggling, right? I'm a veteran, also a Marine Corps veteran. So, and these populations look a lot alike. They have challenges and they have resources, and ne'er the twain shall meet, right? And so what peers do is we model this in the field. We are engaging membership. We are going to the apprenticeship program. We are going to our union meetings. We are going to job site visits, and anywhere our members are at, we are there. We feel like that is what makes a difference when somebody sees what makes this work. How do we engage someone? We tell our story. We become vulnerable. We take our armor off, and it allows the other. It's incredible. We'll show up on a job site, and we got our men and women out there bulled up. They got their armor on because they're on the job site. That's the stigma and the wall, the 10-foot deep, 100-foot tall wall that we're busting through. But the minute Aaron and I speak about our challenges openly, it that's just how human beings work. It opens the door for them to speak. And immediately after a job site talk, we have half the room coming up to talk to us. Our organization was really worried when we first opened this program up. Hey, nobody's going to want to come up and talk to you, but just leave your card out. But the floodgates are open. This need is deep, as I mentioned, with the numbers, and it's been really powerful to see these men and women. Because remember, we are these tradespersons, these laborers. We live this life. We know what a struggle it was to look around us, to not see answers as to how to move forward, to get help, to not be able to even vocalize what was going on with us, let alone where to find help. Another interesting piece I love to talk about peer work is we're like a thread of continuity, right? We have members calling us, like Aaron mentioned, some upstream work. We know what to do in acute crisis, right? We have resources. That's a big part of what we do. And I'll let Aaron speak about some more. But we'll have members call us just to check and say, hey, are you really who you are? And we'll have a conversation, and we open that door and we build relationships with people who may not be ready to make that change yet, but they know that they have someone here. So
Yeah, and a lot of the ways that we break through this stigma is getting out in front of the membership, like James said, and really informing our men and women, what their benefits look like, what's offered to them. That could even be something as simple as, temp disability that can help move the needle towards them going and seeking help. And through the treatment process, we're engaged with them, right? And when they come out, normally we'll land at a meeting somewhere, or you know an outpatient facility, right? And what that does is, like, we can map out exactly what this is going to look like for these men and women, so they're not running into a barrier or whatever the case may be. And that goes with what something they may owe, right? Or who they're even going to talk to walking in the door. It can just make all the difference having that warm handoff. Yeah, and that really helps to break through some of that stigma. I mean, occupational stigma is huge. Like, our job, right? Until our wife's getting ready to leave, or we're going to lose our job, are we ready to do something normally? So these two guys getting up and saying, no, this organization supports you, right? We're here for you. These are some options you have for your benefits to help support you and your family. Makes a huge difference. And hopefully, right, within this, within our community, right, connecting with community resources, having things for people that aren't insured, having places for folks to go, just making that connection with the community is huge in trying to break through some of that, community stigma. And then, right, we bring a lot of shame and guilt with us. So sharing vulnerable helps people break through some of that shame, right? And allows people to have hope, right? And hope is the biggest thing we can give somebody. And last thing I'll finish up is, like, leadership is huge, right? Like, having your foreman, having supervisors, whoever the case may be, to be able to identify, having people that are willing to, right? If you're willing to be one of those four persons or whatever, to reach out to folks and talk to them, it's getting a little education, right? And we can work together, and that way, yeah, we can catch more people early, and really sometimes it's just a sincere "how are you," right? Like, eye to eye, that empathetic "how are you," and yeah, it can just mean the world, the difference for people. So yes.
yeah, Aaron and I are huge proponents of natural support, right? It's what makes peer work work. And so we also want this here in St. Louis. We're working on a trades wellness coalition where the other trades are learning how we do what we do, coming together, how they can make peer programs work, how they can connect resources. And we want that to and educate, having a shared language here in St. Louis, peers connecting on job sites. But we know that on the job site, a four-person, or like Aaron mentioned, somebody in recovery is going to have thousands of more touches. We know because we were on these crews, right? You know more about each other's lives than anyone else, and so getting that education out there, some of this basic mental health first aid, because Aaron and I aren't doing this alone. Also educating at the organizational level, things like recovery-friendly workplaces. So we all working on this together. We also mentioned resources. What I mentioned that we have a lot of resources, and we do. We're lucky. We have good benefits because we work hard, our organization. But Aaron mentioned, a lot of people who are struggling, and we both have been there. You're kind of at the end, and you may not have your benefits, or you may have a family member that's struggling. By the way, we don't just support our member, right? Because if something's happening and affecting to them, you can't isolate your members' well-being from their family and the people around them. So we're supporting their family also. So if there's someone in their sphere that needs help and doesn't have insurance, also connecting with the insurance providers. Our MAP is a little difficult to navigate. Even though there's treatment providers here in the field, really good treatment providers, we found that when we first started, it was a complicated process to get these men and women who had good benefits into this program. And so Aaron and I are just another pathway to remove barriers. That's a big part of what we job, removing barriers. So when we first started, it might have taken a couple days to get someone a bed in a facility. And now we make a phone call, and that's the power of our organizations also, of course. But we have relationships. We know these people well. And so if there's something hanging us up, we work it out. So yeah, that's a kind of a broad overview of what we do. Diane, I don't know if you want to jump in with some questions, if Aaron wants to.
Yeah, and just, what's really been fruitful is getting the folks the best treatment possible, right? Vetting these resources, getting out, having that direct contact with folks, and yeah, because it can be a murky, it can be a murky space. So yes, really proud of what we do, and we are definitely making a difference in folks' lives with the help of community and our organization. And it's a wide net. So
Yeah, I'd agree with Aaron. Uh, Even our leadership here, and they know a lot about what's going on in the community. They don't know a lot of the details of we're getting to, in real time, connect our membership to treatment facilities, whether it's inpatient or outpatient, and watching the outcomes, working with them. We visit our members in treatment. If they're having a problem, we're there, facilitating the process. So this is a broad umbrella that we couldn't have imagined all the lives that we get to touch. We never thought we'd be taking calls for eating disorders, domestic violence, marriage counseling, anything that our members are struggling with. It's something that we're here to help them navigate. So it's a really powerful program, and we love how open these relationships from our leadership, anyway, from the top down, from our organizations, how these conversations, these much needed conversations are happening. We're really grateful to be a part of that.
So there's a lot of questions coming up in the chat. You guys are doing a good job hitting about them, talking about community resources. But I want to have Dr. John Gaal present, and then we're going to open it up to questions. But keep putting in the questions you have, and we will make sure we address them, or we'll follow up afterwards. But thank you, James and Aaron, for sharing it. And it's just exciting to hear about this investment that has been made, and the return on investment that you're starting to see in people. So, Dr. Gaal.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Ann, and thanks to James and Aaron. These guys have been just a joy to work with and work beside for the last 3+ years, and I see great things on the horizon. So, Diane, you sent me a list of I guess, questions to consider when it came to the piece on postvention here. And it's really important to understand that the connection that you've made by pulling these two topics together is really, really significant. So for those of you who don't know, for about the past 2 years, I've been on somewhat of a journey creating a pilot study with respect to suicide postvention in the U.S. construction industry. And I am here to tell you that when it comes to suicide prevention, most of us have heard of that, and we've probably seen programs come our way. In fact, I would suggest that upwards of about 90% of the funding that's out there has been focused on the prevention issues. Maybe the balance of it, mostly on intervention issues. So prevention in my world is awareness. Intervention is what to do when you see something. And then postvention is truly the aftercare. What do you do as an organization, as an individual, with the fact that we now have lost survivors? So one of the things that we should be aware of is that there are tools and resources. They're becoming more plentiful as more research is being done on the topic of postvention. I would suggest that proper planning, assigning a team, and then practicing, just like you would be with a soccer or baseball or football team. You don't just come up with a plan and never practice it, because we need to practice for that case of unexpected death. And so one of the first things I would suggest, it's an easy lift. AFSP just created a 1-hour webinar on postvention, and it's for the general public. It's not specific to construction. It's called Caring Communities. If you can find one in your area, it's a great way to begin the journey. And the reason I say that is I was just up in Canada and made 2 presentations to over 500 people in late November. And the first group had a little over 300 in it. The second group had a little over 200 in it. In the first group, when I asked about suicide prevention, suicide intervention, the vast majority of people in both groups have heard of both those terms. With the group of over 300, just around 2% had ever heard of the term postvention. And the other group was about 9%. So we can see we got a lot of work to do here with regards to postvention. And I think we start, by educating ourselves. And the reason this came about, my study came about, was the simple fact that for those of you who don't know, I lost my son, 24-year-old son, in March of 2017. And in the immediate aftermath of that, I didn't know where to turn or who to turn to. And so this became a project of mine. I took a call about 4 years later from a friend in the industry, somewhat of the same situation. He didn't know where to turn. And then in the summer and fall of 2024, from the end of July to the end of October, I took 8 suicide calls. And I impress upon you that none of these people were asking me, John, what do I do 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, 3 years from now? Every one of them was asking me, what do I do right now? So that really made it clear to me that we needed to move forward with this as an industry. And of course, focus on the acute portion. So in the acute portion, which I call the first 48, some frame it as the first 48 to 72, we want to stabilize. We need to take care of people near and dear to the situation, to the person we just lost. And we first do that by making sure we obtain permission to share the appropriate information. I I would say that when it comes to employees who are grieving after a loss, we have to understand that the science has shifted in the last few years. If you go back about 15 years ago, you can find information saying that one suicide essentially impacted 6 people around that person we just lost. In 2018, the University of Kentucky researchers found that that was way off. It's closer to 135. So think about this. We live in a nation that we lose upwards of 50,000 people a year. Multiply that by 135. You're in the 6 to 7 million range every year. People who are affected at different levels. And so that's what we have to become aware of, because this requires contingency planning, which means we have to do things beforehand. Because a lot of people are saying, how do we grieve and at the same time keep the business up and running? Well, this takes a lot of coordinated planning, and we're seeing more and more entities coming forward with different types of postvention plans. A number of the leading sectors, in my opinion, after doing research on this for a few years now, I would say the veterinarian industry, the military sector, they have some really good programs that we should consider of cherry picking what works for them and seeing how it could work for our industry. With respect to why peer support matters, I would say that the contemporary research when it comes to peer support is suggesting that a peer-to-peer relationship actually has better outcomes than that of a peer-to-professional, because there's this natural power differential there. And so I think it's really important, especially in an industry that's still about 89% male dominated. So it's a very macho culture. And as Aaron alluded to before, there's a lot of stigma embedded in it. When it comes to leaders communicating effectively and compassionately during the postvention process, I think we have to be very clear that we understand that each person had a unique relationship with the individual who we just lost, who died by suicide. Therefore, it takes a lot of planning on our behalf and training to understand that we have to treat each one of those 135 people differently. So what appears on the surface, this person never really worked close with so-and-so. The bottom line is you don't know what they did after work, on their free hours, at lunch, and those kinds of things. So they may have a different relationship than the visual relationship that you saw. Again, treat each individual, as an individual. Don't try to lump sum. We get a lot of times we get in this mode that we've got to immediately send in a crisis response team. More recent research is showing us that you have to be very careful when you do that, because you may further put those people in a blame and shame mode, because when you tell them things that they didn't realize, now they're questioning what they did or didn't do and how that contributed to that person's death. And the fact is suicide is very complicated. And it's rarely a single facet. It's normally a multifaceted issue why that person took their life. So what are some of the common mistakes organizations make with respect to postvention? And how can they be avoided? Well, I mentioned one already. We're not properly planning and preparing for an unexpected event of this nature. I would suggest that most companies are just starting to understand the importance of postvention, but that comes from the top. So leadership, as James and Aaron alluded to earlier, is really critical here. Having a doctorate in organizational leadership, I can't go without saying that as a leader, you need to model the behavior you expect of others. And I think that's key here. A third point I would suggest that we kind of fall down on is that we don't follow up on a regular basis, upwards of 2 years. This isn't a one and done. We have to make sure that we continue to show that we care about each person's individual mental health. And you wouldn't believe some of the studies that have been done out there by just sending a simple postcard to someone checking in on them, and how that's really made positive inroads in this area. And the fourth, and I think this is a critical one, because a lot of us are reactionary. Almost immediately after we have a death by suicide in a company or in a community or in a family, people run to resources. And most of the resources, as I alluded to out there, are focused on suicide prevention. So in my opinion, one of the last things you want to do is deliver a suicide prevention training to a group who just lost someone near and dear to them in probably less than 90 days after the incident. And the reason being, we get back to that shame and blame issue. A lot of people feel guilty when they hear about, well, I should have saw this and I should have done this. The fact is that we don't need to further tip some people who may already be vulnerable over the edge, and then have a suicide contagion issue on our hands. So those are 4 points there. How would I integrate postvention into an overall mental health strategy for construction? I think we have to step back and understand that we need to connect the 3 legs of what I call the suicide triangle. As I mentioned earlier, most of the work has been done on the one leg, and that's on prevention. Another leg is intervention. Some work has been done there, but very little work has been done on the third leg of the triangle. And that triangle essentially is postvention. And unless and until we connect those 3 legs, I don't think we're going to see dramatic drops in the 50,000 number of deaths per year. So, and as James mentioned earlier, upwards of over 5,000 just in the construction industry. Do the math and look at what that means. We're losing a person from our industry essentially about every 2 hours, every day of the week, every week of the year, every month of the year. That's pretty sad stuff. So we have to connect those 3 legs, because the bottom line is we've been siloing these 3 issues, or sometimes conflating them without making clear connections. We have to understand that prevention is connected to intervention, intervention is connected to postvention, and the research, the scant research that's out there on postvention clearly tells us that a good postvention equates to a good prevention program. So how do I see peer support helping build trust and morale and after a tragedy? Well, I think James and Aaron sent a very clear message. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. To build trust, you have to build relationships. You have to build community. You have to do it with people who've walked a mile in their shoes. And I think that's the beauty of what we're seeing, from the outcomes of the LEAN program here in St. Louis. Because when they build these relationships, we often build new networks, and that equates to trust. And I again, LEAN's done a great job. They've done such a great job, and they've heard me say this before, that although success breeds success, these 2 guys are getting calls from other trades from other states now. And this has really kind of pushed us in the St. Louis region to create the St. Louis Building Trades Wellness Coalition, because we can't burn out these two gems we got sitting in front of us today. They have done an outstanding job, and I'm proud to say, I've been able to work with them for the past 3 or so years. So here's what I found in my pilot study from the surveys. Number one question I was looking at was, does the construction industry need to pay, closer attention to the issue of postvention? 95% of the responses said, well, most definitely. We have an opportunity to act here. The second question basically asks, okay, if we have an opportunity to act, then should we also consider focusing on the short term, on the acute phase? And 77% of the people surveyed agreed to move in that direction. And then the third question leaned on the second question. So, okay, if you answered in the positive on number two. Number three basically said, and this is where the peer support comes in, if that's the case, do you see peer support playing a significant role in delivering this? And 81% of the people surveyed said yes. So this sends a clear message. So I've done other research on peer support. I live it with James and Aaron. And so, again, it's been great to work with these guys. So, again, I think if we stabilize, if that's the acute phase goal in those first 48 to 72, then when it comes for the midterm, we need to focus on grief and do what TAPS, the military, elite program for postvention, calls grief work, and then and be careful about how we approach both grief and trauma. So some of these issues need to be left to the professionals. So James and Aaron don't consider themselves, nor do I, a counselor or therapist. We're traffic cops, for lack of better words. When we hear something, we talk through it with the people we're addressing, and we try to find options for them to move forward in a positive direction. And then finally, in the long term, the third stage, the third phase is what we call post-traumatic grief. This is where people who've been through the first two phases, they realize how post-traumatic grief becomes important and how one learns and then begins to share and grow from their experiences. So thus, me, doing a webinar or podcast or research along these lines, because I can tell you, it's something I would never want another parent to go through. What my family has gone through since March of 2017. So again, I reiterate. Let's face it. About 90% of funding's been invested in prevention efforts to date. The remainder of it mostly addresses intervention. So to that end, very little funding has been targeted, towards the third leg of the triangle, postvention. If you don't believe it, just look at the scarcity of the research in the area of postvention. There's not a lot out there on peer-reviewed research. So I have to, take this opportunity to thank people who've been my mentors, people like Dr. Pamela Hatton. She's on from the London area right now. Another dear mentor here in the United States is Dr. Frank Campbell. He's done some great work in the United States, creating LOSS teams, that stands for Local Outreach to Suicide Survivors. And they're spotted throughout the United States. Not every community has a LOSS team. It takes a lot of time and effort to create one and keep it maintained. So with the dearth of programs with respect to postvention across the United States, we need to examine the scant data that's available and leverage, what we know from that data. So I suggest, when it comes to this issue of how do we measure success, we start slow. And we then build robust metrics. And in the meantime, try to advocate for more funding for this vital third leg of the triangle called postvention. So, Diane, I think that covers most of the things that you asked me to try to cover.
You did a great job, John. Thank you so much.
Thank
So,
you.
what became clear to me, which I knew, but I think you guys emphasized it well, is how much mental health touches all of us in different ways. And it's something, we need to think about because of those long-term impacts. But also, I think there's a newer recognition of the role that work plays in mental health. Work can certainly be a source of stress, deadlines, long hours, physically demanding work. But we also know that it has a lot of benefits. It gives us a sense of purpose, our identity. We can relate to it. And most importantly, maybe that social network. But Aaron and James and John, it's open to everybody. Why construction and peer support? What makes it successful here? And would it transfer to other industries? Or is there something unique about construction?
I wouldn't say so. I always describe it like this as a veteran, right? You put a veteran in a room with a non-veteran, they're going to be fine, right? They're going to communicate, but you'll feel the wall there. You put them in the room with another veteran, that wall disappears. I think that's human nature, and something that you just touched on, Diane, that I may sound a little corny here, but we've taken the person out of our lives, right? We've gotten away, especially, it may be this to your point, especially in construction, right? You leave your stuff at the gate when you come in, and you work hard, you bust hump, and then you go back. We've taken the human being out of it. And so the one piece that we've developed programming. There's so much programming out there to help. And guess what? None of it reaches down to that man or woman out in the field, in my opinion, right? And so this bringing the human back in. So whether it's the foreman, the owner, bringing the humanity back in, being able to ask somebody if they're okay. And there's this, misconception that, we're very dualistic society, right? You got your stuff together, or you're a broken piece of do. And that's not how human beings are, right? And so we can still, people think we either, this sounds like a lot of fluff and softness. It's just about being a good human being. So you can still, we can still give each other crap and have a good time, and be tough and hard and show up. We have to do that, right? And also care about each other. Or if somebody, and also if someone's going through a hard time, and it because you see them every day, you can ask them how they're doing, and then be connected to this network. Well, hey, that's another misconception. Everybody's afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. It doesn't have to come out in this trained clinical way. You know how to ask that guy if he's okay. You grab him by the scruff of his neck and love up on him, or whatever works for that programming. Sorry if that was a long-winded answer.
No, and I like that connection there with Aaron. I think that's very true, is that personal connection is lost, and sometimes our leaders are not on the same site even. So having somebody who's out there. A couple of questions that have come up in the chat I just want to address here. A lot of people were interested in implementing this program in their site, and I appreciate those that have responded and shared resources with them. I'll also put out that our speakers will share their contact information again at the end, are more than willing to be contacted and to talk with you about it. Very responsive to that. There was a question that just came in about if you guys could talk a little bit about maybe a postvention that you've been involved with, and share what you feel comfortable sharing, but maybe some guidance if there's that we could take away from this conversation.
So one I was just recently involved with, it's often difficult for people to reach out because of our culture. We've pretty well stigmatized the topic of suicide because of either religion or laws or whatever it might be historically. Fortunately, we have scientists like you and and Dr. Brad out there doing, work, basically showing that these are not typically people in good mental health, and so I have to say that the postventions I've been dealing with in the last couple of months, you get the calls right away, and you open up the conversation, you take time to listen, you point them towards resources, and the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is even if they don't connect with you, and contact you back, is continue not to stalk them, but what I often do is the following week I'll send another resource that we may have not discussed the week before, and so I know that Aaron and James, have their own stories, along these lines. In fact, Aaron, James, and I were out at a conference last summer, and I just presented the day before on Postvention, and Aaron and I were sitting there, and he grabbed me and said, "Hey, we got to go out in the hallway," and we took a call from one of his people back in St. Louis, a safety director who had just lost a fellow worker. And we again, technology is wonderful, and we're seeing that in some of the comments. That sometimes person to person peer support isn't available because of time and distance, but we can get on a Zoom or something along those lines. And make no mistake, when we deal with people, we're held to our code of ethics. All three of us are certified peer supporters, and we're all certified community health workers. So we're held to a code of ethics. So we operate under the guise of HIPAA. And that's really important, because that's one of the reasons that we find often that EAPs are not being used as much as they should be, because people don't think they're private. And so, Aaron, you want to share anything?
Yeah, the couple that come up right away was we were called to a job site. A guy had just taken his own life the night before, and the EAP shows up, and he's got his clipboard, and he's like reading off verbatim what's going on this sheet of paper, and and you can just see the glaze over everybody's eyes, and so then the owner had a chance to speak. We had a chance to speak. I have experience with suicide survivor, suicide attempt survivor. So kind of shared some of that, and was able to connect with a few people on that job. As far as the EAP goes, like that wasn't a very good use of EAP, having somebody just show up like that, right? There was no human connection to that. And the other one that comes to mind is somebody at a construction company had somebody die by suicide, and we were actually we were on a critical incident
Intervention.
Critical incident intervention, I guess, with the guy that got ran over by a roller for asphalt. And so that the EAP lady that was there, she was really helpful. She was down to earth. She you could tell, like she didn't read off a clipboard. She one by one was going around talking to folks. And so on this next postvention piece that we were on, we actually requested her to be there. So that was a big help for them, having her there, and that was just from the connection that we had from the previous. incident.
When you have a good team, that's part of what we're talking about here, right? Building a good team, having good programming. And I think a question a lot of people have is, okay, how'd you do this, right? You know, we are an open book here in St. Louis. Boston, Mass helped us get where we're going. John helped us build and guide us through our programming. We're here to help all of y'all, and I'm sure that you have resources and you can find these things. But building a team that works for y'all is the best way forward. I wanted to say something also. We talked about these acute numbers. To me, those are just that nice, that point that we all can. But there are so much going on out in these members' lives on a daily basis. We know because we are them, that I believe that peer support can mitigate in so many ways. We're having these conversations about mental health. I mean, ultimately, just open it up and say we're talking about changing culture, and it's not as hard as everybody thinks. They are thirsty for this. So I just wanted to mention that it's not just these acute cases. We have the numbers on alcoholism and drug addiction in the field, I think are highly, highly underreported. So I'm just throwing that out there as some, my lived experience for what's going on out there and how peer programs. I saw in the chat too, Don Willie. Sorry, Diana, if I'm taking your job away from you. Don asked about and this is kind of like, okay, we know we have a problem. How's this working? Does peer support work? Our numbers for our behavioral health utilization, for anybody who doesn't know this, and this is not a bang on EAPs and MAPs, but they're underutilized. Nobody, again, back to the starting point, our population has an aversion to reaching out to these resources. They're underutilized in the low single digit numbers. Our behavioral health benefits utilization went up 25. So, do you know the number?
First year.
The first year, 25%. And then another 20% the next year on top of the 25. These are people who needed help, who were not getting help. So that's kind of the other end of the spectrum of what's going on here in St. Louis. Aaron and I would say it's working because we know people are calling. We see the changes in their lives. We see people from the emergency room or who have a child who's struggling with some mental health challenges. We hear the feedback from them, but also these numbers represent a huge jump in behavioral health utilization. So yeah.
James, I want to follow up on that, what you said as well as Aaron. So to be a peer, you have to have lived experience. And these gentlemen here are both in sobriety. And they're doing a wonderful job. They're able to connect with others because a lot of people don't see themselves in that power differential I spoke to earlier. And so I'm not trying to say that we don't need the licensed professionals. We certainly do, because we just heard from Aaron. It was very helpful to have that EAP rep on the job, when they went, because there are certain aspects, and I alluded to earlier. I didn't expand on it. But the bottom line is, the three of us, we can work around the edges of grief, but we have no business of being in trauma. Trauma takes a licensed professional, and we have to recognize that. And so we know that we can't go and run and get someone. We have to have someone already in our back pocket. And that's what these guys have done. They've vetted so many, different agencies out there. Because let's face it, you go back 5-10 years ago, there were a lot of sober by the seat type programs that were essentially bilking our health and welfare funds at 30 grand plus a month. These guys have lived it. And whenever I got a question on, where to send someone, they're my go-to people because they've been there. They've gone back out and vetted. I think it's really good. I want to share something else. This whole issue about postvention is something that the United States, by no stretch of the imagination, has a lock on. I had to travel last summer over to England, Scotland to learn firsthand from professionals over there in this space, and then bring that that information back. So if you roll back into into the chat area, you're going to see a comment there from Dr. John Gibson. He was a fabulous host. One of the very first workforce postvention trainings I ever went to was with the Canmore Trust over in Scotland. And he makes a really good point there. In the UK, the Brits have basically created a manual, a guide for postvention. They are so far ahead of us, in spite of the fact that we have a lot of pride in what we do. We're not always first, and I think we need to recognize that. And to your earlier question, Diane, when it comes to peer support, let's face it, almost any industry sector is moving into this space, and so it's again, it's not something that the construction created. I know James and Aaron, not unlike myself, we went through peer training through the state here in Missouri, and I can't speak for those two, but in my group, there were 30 people. Only 2 of us came from something different than the federal or state prison system. One came from construction, one came from the military. So there's an eclectic mix of people and backgrounds moving into the peer support space. And once again, it's really important. I see one of our colleagues online, Kurt, with the peer network. Sometimes we can't, because of the transient nature of construction, we can't be everywhere physically. So we have to figure some of this out with technology. So I want to give that a nod as well.
I want to jump in and talk about something real quick. John mentioned about this disclosure, power differential, right? Who on a job site is probably any job on the planet wants to go to their boss or their safety person and tell them, this disaster that they feel inside. That maybe we'll get there one day, but today we're not there. So that's that confidentiality in that place, that safety. Also wanted to mention resources. With MAPs and EAPs, John has his own story here, and I know we have a lot to get to, but many times you resource out, you ask someone like an EAP, and you'll get these resources that haven't been vetted. Half of the numbers, the people aren't working in the field anymore, or they're not in network anymore. They're really poor resources. That's something that Aaron and I really shine at, making sure that's our gig, to make sure that there's good help out there.
So we are just about at time. And, I think I want to thank Aaron, James, and John for their comment. I also noticed that a lot of people put resources in the chat. And if you have some, please put them in. We will be sending this out. And I also want to share the contact information. And I want to point out our role as the Healthier Workforce Center is to really take this information and to package it up to help get it out. So a lot of resources are available on our website, and we're also happy to contact people. If you have a resource you want to share, send it to me, send it to the website, we'll get it. And I think that we called this supporting the crew because that's the key. That's what we need to do. And we need to raise awareness. We need to reduce stigma. We need training so we know what to say and how to respond in these situations and what resources are out there. And finally, we need to get people to resources. And that's how we're going to address this crisis here. I just want to give a final thank you to our speakers. Again, excellent. If you want more, happy to bring them back, or you can reach out directly to them. I think this has been a really good, robust conversation online and also in the chat. And we'll stay on for a few minutes if there's more questions. But thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Really nice job. I don't know if you could follow along on the chat, but definitely.
We're looking through some of it. Yeah, a lot of,
Yeah.
You know what I love about this, and you mentioned it, the resources popping up, that we're doing the thing, we're doing the work. This is not just informational, right? I love that about our construction industry. We're doers.
Yes. Jeff, did you have a question? I see your hands up.
I do. Thanks for the opportunity. Just wonderful presentation. Thank you, John, Aaron, and James. Wonderful. I know one of my colleagues, Michael Curry, I think is here, as well as Eliza Zarkar. But I did put it in the chat space, but sometimes not everybody sees that. But I work in Rhode Island. I'm the state director of Recovery Friendly Workplace. So I just want to just let people know about that. Recovery Friendly Workplace is it's something that we're seeing in almost every state. It's federally supported as well, but there's a lot of overlap between what the work Aaron and James and Dr. Gaal are doing. So if you do serve for Recovery Friendly Workplace Initiative in your state, you might find it's a good place to collaborate with, because what we're trying to do in workplaces, regardless whether they're nonprofit or government or whatever, is bring in awareness around substance use disorders and mental health in the workplace, helping companies develop policies and attitudes and actions and skill sets to address these things on an early basis before people either get terminated or lose their job. So there's something I just want to throw out there. Very proud of the work that we do, but there's a lot of overlap to what the guys are doing today. So thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Well, I was blessed, Diana, to work with Dr. Anne-Marie Dale years ago on the recovery friendly piece for construction that you have on your site now. And alongside that project, I was working with Dr. Doug Swanson on a larger project that covered union and non-union, all industries across the state of Missouri. So we have our own recovery friendly work site in the state of Missouri. So, and it's one of the topics we're going to cover in one of our upcoming meetings soon with the St. Louis Building Trades Wellness Coalition.
And Jeff, Anne-Marie's work is on our website. It's, if you Google opioidsandconstruction.com, one word. These are guidelines she developed for employers on opioid use, and it can be applied more broadly to substance use, but they're actually a really great resource. And we have a lot of short videos and other one-page resources. So feel free to reach out. And actually, I think John is presented there. Aaron and James, we may not have captured you yet, but you're on our radar.
Did you say opioidsandconstruction.org, Diane?
Yep, opioidsandconstruction.com.
Oh, .com. Thank you so much.
Yeah, reach out if you need it.
Recovery friendly workplaces is a big piece of this puzzle for us to help understand and move forward for our contractors. It's a huge piece of the puzzle. I love that that was brought up and talked about. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Aaron.
I see a lot of people are online. If you have questions, why don't you go ahead? If Aaron, James, John, you guys can stay for a little bit.
Good.
Sure.
And I'll go ahead and share those resources.
Yeah, I love this. Having people at the table. I see a lot of our, John mentioned Kurt Schmidt earlier. I see Chris Ray from Charlie Mental Health. Like, we're all here. It's kind of how our coalition works here in St. Louis, sharing, talking about how to solve problems. I find that most people in our area care. They care a lot, whether it's the contractor or the foreman. They may not have the language or the resources, and so that's what we're here doing, right? Or at least a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Bill, do you have a question?
Steve?
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm Bill McCamley. I'm actually on a contract with the New Mexico Building Trades Council to create kind of what y'all are doing in St. Louis with your wellness coalition. And so we're looking at you guys as a model. I'm actually just wondering, is there any way I could get a recording of this Zoom, how that would get out? There's just a ton of stuff on here, and I happen to be in a car right now driving from Austin to New Mexico, but it'd be great to have. I loved all the information on Postvention. Love the information that just came up on the opioids and the drug abuse stuff, and just was wondering where I might be able to get a recording so I could get all this stuff written down when I have more freedom to do that.
Absolutely. We're going to send it out once we clean it up. And along with that, we'll send the resources that were mentioned there. And then you can always reach out to healthierworkforcecenter.org. but it will get sent out since you're registered. We have your contact information. And you will have access, and that includes the contact information for our speakers. So,
Thanks to the Peer Support boys. You guys are killing it. Great job, fellas. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Good to hear from you, Bill.
others with comments or questions, I'll go back to some of the additional resources that we're promoting here. These are ones about the St. Louis, some news stories about peer support and Postvention podcast. As we want to learn more about it, I think it's kind of nice to hear from people who are actually implementing it.
Mm.
Well, hearing no more questions, I think we'll call it a wrap. I know I'm an audience of one that's unmuted, but I will give you both, all of you, my claps. Really appreciate it. A great conversation. And thank you for taking the time and keep doing the work you're doing. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank
Really
you.
Great
appreciate it.
opportunity to share.
yeah.